Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar on the upcoming launch of the courses Understanding and Applying Design Thinking in Product Innovation. So thank you for joining us this morning. With me today, I have three distinguished panelists. So there is Wei Wei from Palo IT Singapore. There's also Darren from Simtex Innovation Factory and Jasmine from Simtex Microfluidics Research Group. So myself, I will be the moderator for today's session. My name is Dwayne. I'm also from Palo IT. So this course is actually brought together by the combined collaboration between A-Star's Simtech, Knowledge Transfer Office, as well as Palo IT Singapore. For some quick background, Palo IT Singapore is actually an innovation consultancy, right? We are a human-centric tech solutions house, so to speak. We have about 600 packs across the world, and we deal with design thinking in our day-to-day work with our clients when we build their digital products. With that said, Darren, would you like to give an introduction of Simtech as well?
Yeah, hello. So my name is Darren, and I take care of the business operations department in Innovation Factory. So Innovation Factory, or IF for short, is a unit under Simtech A-Star, and we're pretty new, about a year and a half. We're established on 15 December 2020, and we help local companies. Our main focus would be on SMEs and startups to become product owners, and with the main aim to move up to higher value chains. So this could be a development of a new product, improvement to an existing product, or implementation of a new process into the business system in order for them to scale up. So this is what we do.
Thank you, Darren. And from what I understand, at the Innovation Factory, design thinking plays a big part in the overall ideation and prototyping and testing process to get these products out to market. So thank you for the introduction.
Thank you.
So without further ado, let's dive into some of the questions posed to the panelists. So my first question is actually, how did you get interested in design thinking, and what has your experience been with it so far? So maybe Wei Wei.
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Wei Wei. As Dwayne has introduced, a UX consultant from Palo IT. I think I first got into contact with design thinking through the Ideos video on remaking the shopping cart, and it was quite amazing to me that you can come up with an innovation, like a pretty innovative idea in a short amount of time using a tested methodology. So that kind of got me hooked. So of course, as a UX designer, I actually do apply design thinking in my day-to-day job. But I think the most recent engagement and a rather extensive one is I was doing a full design thinking course within Palo IT. So this one, just to give a bit more background, it started as part of our delivery excellence initiative because Palo IT places emphasis on like continuously improving the quality of our work. We want to make sure we really deliver more valuable products to our clients. So we figured that actually upskilling all our developers with the design thinking mindset is an important step in that. So we set up this one full day course, and we try to let the developers pick up the designer's mindset, letting them know how to go through the design thinking process, and also give them some tools they can start applying in work. So after the program, I see two things happening. One is that they really value cross collaboration more. There's a boost in cross team collaboration because now, previously they kind of misunderstood what designers do, but now they see a need to talk to designers more often to drive the project forward. And second thing is that now they are more human-centric. So they previously, maybe the developers usually just put their heads down doing coding, but now they start really trying to understand why we are building the product and who we're building it for, so they can empathize with the users more. Yeah.
Thank you, Wei Wei. So I think some of the key points that you captured, really having that cross-collaborative mindset, also being able to put themselves right into the shoes of others and into the shoes of the user. So these are just some of the benefits of design thinking as well. I'd like to also pose that same question to Jasmine. So how did you get interested in the design thinking process?
Yeah, hi, Dwayne. In our research team, we are dealing with translational research. So we actually take technologies that we developed in-house and we productize it. And what we are trying to do is to disrupt the current market with our new technology in our new products. So design thinking is very essential to what we are doing because firstly we are actually doing a lot of prototyping. So we do have to ensure that the prototypes that we are building really we are actually meeting the needs of the user with our prototypes, and the products that we are developing really meets the user requirements.
Thank you, Jasmine. So, with regards to this, experience utilizing design thinking, have there been any sort of success stories that you'd be able to highlight? Maybe Darren, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think there's one case that does come to mind. So it's one of our members called Crunch Cutlery. So Crunch Cutlery is a startup who produces edible cutlery. So when they came to us, they had a very simple problem statement or something that they wanted to improve on, which was the design of the product, how to make it more marketable, and how probably to upscale it to other markets. So when it came to us during the ideation phase, so Innovation Factory also has a four-stage business model, IDEA, and the first stage was the ideation. When it came to us, they wanted to redesign the product, and we went up to the design of a more modern look. So basically the old design was a simple fork, a spoon. And the new design, we made it smaller and created into the yin and yang design to make it like snappable, like a pair of chopsticks, which gave it the signature feel and look of the uniqueness of the design. And also went on to the engineering stages in which we had to recreate the mold to make it make it bake more evenly, and also the application in which we help them to mass produce this new product out to the market. So they came into all four stages, which is not very often at this point of time, but all the way to A. We work with them all through all four stages of our business model, I, D, E, and A. And from a small market in Singapore, now they're reaching out to a bigger market in Australia. And right now we're also working on a new project again to redesign the new product for them to target more markets again. So in terms of a success, I think this one really comes to my mind. I think it's not often that a company goes through every single phase with us within a short span of time.
Thank you, Darren, for that answer. So I think with Crunch Cutlery, it's really very the design is really very innovative and very cool. And I think the fact that they are repeat customers shows that the design thinking process is also iterative, and it's a matter of continuously improving and continuously ensuring that you're meeting the needs of your clients in whichever market you wish to enter. So for the same question, right? So any success stories with regards to the application of design thinking? Next, maybe Wei Wei.
Yeah, I think I can use our collaboration with MOHT as an example. So the background is that the population in the community, especially the elderly, when they got discharged from the hospital, coming back to their community care providers, the system is not integrated and their information is not flowing from the hospital to the local community. And this poses challenges to both the caregivers and the patients themselves. From the caregiver perspective, they do not have an overview of the case or the patient status updates. Basically, they don't have any timely information in their system. On the other hand, for the patients, sometimes they end up having duplicate appointments, or the elderly, they couldn't retell their medical history very accurately. So we came up with this problem statement of how might we facilitate the sharing of patients' data more efficiently so that we can reduce the burden for the patients and at the same time drive collaboration among the caregivers. And of course, we went through the design thinking's classic 5 steps. We started by really empathizing with the users. So we had 5 design thinking sessions, like really trying to talk to our key stakeholders and the end users and understand their pain points. Then we organize all these insights into a full user journey map. So that's how we define, the patient's journey, and it helps us to zoom in on the key pain points and the obstacles they're facing in the process. So this becomes the launch pad for us to really ideate, and that's how we came up with the idea of the pop-up app, which is basically an app you can use on iPad, for the medical caregivers to note down the information about the patients and also update their treatment plans and stuff like that. So all those insights gets translated into the features on this app, and we built the prototype of it, and we're also testing it. So hopefully with this, it really reduce the burden for the patients, as we have set out at the start of the project, and we really see it increase the collaboration between the different caregivers as well.
Thank you, Wei Wei, for that answer. So I really like the fact that you brought up reducing the burden on the patient side, because that really captures what design thinking is all about. Really ensuring that the final product is usable and applicable and can be used to solve the various challenges that are faced as part of a problem statement. Jasmine, so for yourself and within your microfluidics group, how has design thinking been applied successfully?
Okay, so one of our success stories is actually with Revivo Biosystems. So they are actually a small startup that spun off from Simtech. So they are trying to eliminate animal cruelty in testing of pharmaceutical drugs and cosmetic products. Okay, so essentially they have actually come up with core technology, which is to use microfluidic chips to mimic actual human skin conditions on a disposable chip. So in terms of design thinking, when we are actually productizing our in-house technology, we do have to deeply consider how the user will actually interact with the product, because this technology is something that is new. It's something that the user may not have experienced and encountered before. So when we are doing the actual physical prototypes, that's when we actually have to consider designing features that the users are familiar with, they are comfortable with, in order to interact with this new technology.
Thank you, Jasmine. So I think that we can all see that from the various panelists' responses, whether you are in the digital product space, whether you're in F&B, or whether you're in deep tech, right? It seems to be applicable throughout. So I actually want to clarify, right? Is this true? Can we actually apply design thinking across these various physical products, digital products, or even services? So, Wei Wei?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that design thinking is quite universally applied across different industries, different sectors, the different type of products you're talking about, because the underlying process is all the same, and it really all starts with understanding the users. So I think I would just like to highlight one common theme I see across different products is the grown zone. So basically, grown zone is a space that lies somewhere in between the divergent and convergent zones in design thinking. We know that for design thinking process, you start with the divergent process, where you collect a lot of data, the different perspectives, and then you try to synthesize all this different information into meaningful insights. But for some of the products, due to the sheer complexity, people get a bit lost from the divergent to the convergent process, and that's a so-called grown zone. Yeah. I think when we encounter this, the key thing is that you want to stay very focused and keep having faith in the design thinking process. You will be able to find your way out. But of course, there are certain techniques we can use to help the teams get unstuck from the grown zone as well. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen other commonalities when you're applying design thinking across different products.
Yes, I think it definitely does cross over to different areas for be a product or a digital design. So my interpretation of design thinking is literally just putting yourself in the end user's shoes, how to make it better. And another project does come to mind. So it's also another of our members called Smoother. So we are working on with them is a smoothie making machine, and it's already close to completion, and it's going to be out in the market end of this year. So when it came to us, the owner came to us with a simple sketch, and he wanted to translate this into a real working product. And this product, the smoothie machine, did not just consist of the physical mechanical parts and of the machine, but we also had to look into the program of the app, because it's a touchscreen application. And so, of course, the overall design, we had to consider certain factors like, is this a modern design? Is this something, a design that other companies want to put in the office? Would people want to put it in their homes? Is it a color that is lively and not too dark? Is it sleek? And also, and when coming onto the digital part of it, the application is the placement of the buttons, the size of it, and some of the animations as well. Which one comes first? Would people want this option here? Would they want it there? So in this case, it definitely does apply in both product, physical and the digital areas of product design.
Thank you, Darren. Wei Wei, what about with regards to service design? Are there any similarities or differences when we are trying to use design thinking for services?
I would say that it's still very similar in terms of the process, but maybe the difference mainly lies in the prototyping phase. So again, take Power IT as an example. When we do digital products, when we do the prototyping, it's really straightforward because you're just like putting the screens together on mobile, or you're putting the screens together on desktop. But when you're doing service design, you usually prototype through role play. So imagine if you are prototyping a hotel check-in process. Then for this service to work, you actually need to prototype up the whole check-in space. So you probably designate some area as the counter, or like you actually have a makeshift counter, and then you have the queuing area, or maybe the waiting area for your customers. And then you would also have like real people acting as the hotel staff, or another person acting as a customer who has just landed after a 12-hour flight, a little bit grumpy. And then the staff and the user will start having a conversation. You probably will prepare some script as well. So the staff script is basically how you want the new service to be looking like. And you'll see how the interaction plays out, whether you would actually be able to provide a comfortable checking experience for the customer. Yeah, so that's probably the biggest difference when it comes to like service design. Yeah.
Thank you, Wei Wei. Jasmine, with regards to the design thinking process at Simtech side, I understand that the prototyping tools and sort of the machinery can be quite different and quite interesting as well. Would you care to elaborate?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of prototyping tools, one of the most advanced tool right now in prototyping is actually the 3D printing machines. So 3D printing actually allows us to shorten the time for prototyping in order to get our prototypes out into the market to test it as fast as possible. So what it also allows us is actually to shorten the whole product development time, and we can actually churn out more design iterations in a shorter amount of time. So in Simtech, we do have several 3D printing technologies available for us to actually utilize. Besides 3D printing, we do have other ways of prototyping as well, such as the laser cutting machine. So that's another way that we can actually use a sheet form of materials in order to do prototyping. So in Simtech, I can say that we are widely covered in terms of the different types of prototyping tools.
Thank you, Jasmine, for the response. Right, so I thank you all, the panelists so far. So I think we can really see that across service, digital, and physical product design, right, or design, that this methodology can actually universally be applied. Some differences, the ways that you would do the prototyping itself, right? Some similarities would be like the groan zone that can appear in all of these situations. So thank you so much for these questions. So next up, this question is actually about driving design thinking in an organization. So let's say I'm an individual and I really want to bring this methodology back to my company. How would I best go about doing it?
Yeah, so I think on this one, you want to get a sponsor first. So that will make your life much easier. Actually, at Palo IT, the design thinking course can go so smoothly because we got the blessing from our regional managing director as well. So if you're able to get a sponsor to believe in your vision, to believe in the value of design thinking, that would be ideal, because then it would help you to organize the necessary resources and for you to drive this initiative within your organization. But more often than not, what we see is that you are starting very small and you don't really have any big guy standing behind your back. So you actually then want to start from the ground by getting some of the champions together. By champions, I mean people who are deeply passionate about design thinking, who are not very satisfied with status quo, like they see design as a force for better change in the organization. And also people who are a bit more of the rebel kind, right? Who are irreverent, who is really able to take design thinking, put it into use, and start driving some of these changes in the organization. So you got your champions, and the next step is actually to start getting some quick wins, because you probably don't have like a whole year to prove that design thinking is producing value for your company. So you want to start small but getting some quick wins. An example would be like at OCBC, when they are starting to drive their design thinking transformation, they focus on the updates of forms and also letters, because first it's relatively easy to make changes on just piece of paper, and the second point is that it's actually they have a large volume of all this. So by changing this very quickly, you can start to see the conversion rate goes up, or the queries about certain letters actually drop. So I think those are the things that can help you then convince your management that design thinking is a worthy investment.
Thank you, Wei Wei. And I think another way that design thinking can be proliferated within an organization, of course, can be through learning, right? So learning and various courses. And that's why I'd like to bring your attention to the 3 courses that will be launched. There are 3 versions that will be available, right? So the 8-hour introductory or sort of an understanding, right, of design thinking, where trainers from Palo IT such as Wei Wei will actually be running you through the 5-step design thinking methodology. For the second option, right, the 24 hours, so this is more of an intermediate or applying design thinking. So this 24-hour course is actually paired with a hands-on physical prototyping session, and this is where we'll be able to tap on the equipment and expertise of Syntec. So things like the 3D printers that were mentioned by Jasmine earlier, in order to come up with a prototype. Finally, in the last course, for the 42 hours version, this is much more focused on the fabrication process, and it's the courses sort of flow into one another. So if your organization has an interest in design thinking, in prototyping, and in product innovation, I strongly encourage you to check any of these. Okay, so what makes these 3 courses so different from what is offered outside in the market right now? Maybe from the panelists, Wei Wei?
Well, I would feel that a lot of the courses out there focus more on theory, but our course has a very nice balance between theory and the hands-on practice. And some more because we have the collaboration of like Innovation Factory and also Syntec. You can, if you have a product idea and you bring it into the course, chances are you are able to iterate it through the 3 courses, 3 modules, and you're able to like come up with a viable prototype by the end of it already. And maybe Innovation Factory can even help to find funding for it.
Well,
Yes, Darren?
yeah, probably. But so I think participants get to have a rare behind the scenes insight into how IF does projects, and also very importantly, I think they get to use some of our facilities for free. They get to maybe hands-on on our 3D printers, and probably can take back something with them as well.
Thank you, Darren. Jasmine, how would you feel that these courses are different?
Yeah, so like what Darren mentioned, so I think basically the unique selling point of this series of modules is really a hands-on practice that the participants can get, and really to get hands-on onto the prototyping tools that SimTech actually offers, that SimTech has. So participants will really, as adult learners, just going through the theory, sometimes it doesn't resonate with them. So if they are actually able to go through like a workshop style of sessions whereby they can actually utilize the machines to come out with some of their own prototypes, I think that is something that is very unique about this series of modules that we have today.
Thank you, Wei Wei, Darren, and Jasmine. At the same time, I'd also like to add that this course being a collaboration, right, between public sector, A-Star side, and private sector from consultancy side, bringing in the expertise and marrying this across the domains will also be very beneficial. And lastly, the fact that this is probably the only design thinking course in Singapore that can receive up to 90% subsidies as for eligible parties. So these are definitely some of the unique selling points. So with that said, I would like to thank my panelists, right, for the very awesome output and conversations that we have had so far. Right now, let's move into the Q&A section, and I'm sure amongst the audience you have many questions that you would like to pose to our panelists.
Right, so now I'll move on to the Q&A session. Thank you so much, everyone. So if anyone from the audience have any questions you'd like to ask, feel free to ask in the Q&A box or put in the chat box so we can answer your questions. Right, so your question here from the audience, with someone asking, is design thinking the same as Agile? And I believe I can address this to Wei Wei.
Yeah, sure. So I think this is an interesting question, and one that we actually encounter a lot. Because at Power IT, we actually do offer both like design thinking coaching and agile coaching. So we do see companies encounter like, oh, design thinking seems great, and also agile, but are these two the same thing? I would say that first, they do have a lot of things in common because they both are very human-centric, and then they have iterative kind of process. And very importantly, both of them value testing a lot. So design thinking wants you to put out your product to the end users to test. Agile, it also wants to see if it really adds value to the end user. So they do testing to validate that. But I would say that if you are still not sure what kind of problems you're trying to tackle or what kind of scope you're defining for your product, then you want to use design thinking, because design thinking is a methodology to help you pinpoint what kind of problem you're trying to solve. And then for Agile, it's more of a project management methodology where you already have a predefined scope, and then you're trying to deliver it in a fast and efficient manner. Yeah, so that's kind of like a quick rundown between these two.
Great. All right. Thank you so much, Wei Wei. Again, any of our audience have any questions, feel free to place your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll take it live with the experts here today. Right, so another question here from the audience will be asking, do we use design thinking all the time? Should we be using it all the time?
Okay, I think on this one, simple answer is no. For instance, you are thinking about where to go for lunch later. I don't recommend using design thinking for that. So maybe a way of looking at this is if you are solving a problem that is kind of like, it has certain industry standard, or maybe it's purely a simple question of how many chairs I can fit into a classroom. Those questions you don't want to deploy design thinking, because design thinking is more suited for complex problems, like you're trying to figure out, how do I arrange the chairs in a classroom so that we facilitate the learning experience of the participants, right? So this kind of things you don't really have so-called industry standard. And then another angle of looking at it is whether there's a human element in it. So if you're just trying to figure out the best way to eliminate defects on the industry production line, maybe design thinking is not the best fit. But when the human factor comes in, like how do you ensure the working experience of people on the industry production line is also quite streamlined and also safe, for the users, then design thinking will come in and play a role.
Great. Thank you so much, Wei Wei. Okay. While we are doing the Q&A session, I actually would like to open the poll for participants to find out whether you're interested in this particular program. So for those online right now, I'm actually turning on the poll right now. Feel free to answer honestly if you're interested in this particular program, so we can reach out to you. And back to the Q&A, we actually have questions asking, how would you manage possible future upgrading during product design thinking? So may I repeat the question to you? How would you manage possible future upgrading during product design thinking?
So I presume this question is about how do you handle a product upgrade. So I would say that you would like to approach it from the current status. Since your product is existing, that means your users probably has interacted with it a lot, and you have current data on the complaints, or what delights the user. So that offers you like a initial data pool to identify what are the things we should amplify, the delighters we should try to amplify for your upgrading, and things that actually pains the users a lot. That means we should try to contain this or minimize this as much as possible. And of course, I think on top of all this, your company's vision and strategy also comes in and play a big part, because if your company actually wants to steal the product in a slightly different direction, you want to combine it with your existing customer base. So if a group of user is complaining a lot, but they will no longer be your focus in the future, then you don't want to address their concerns that much.
Thank you so much, Wei Wei. So I have a question here on for Innovation Factory for IF. So we're trying to understand what kind of facilities does the Innovation Factory offer?
Okay, that's a pretty good question. So there's definitely going to be a lot of exciting times in store ahead for IF, especially when we move to the new location at CT2B. So we're going to be expanding in size. For those who have not yet come, now we're currently situated at Valley Block. We're only about 1,200, 1,300 square feet in size. So we're upgrading from a 5th gen 5-room flat up to a penthouse. When we go to CT2B, we're 6-7 times the size. And we're going to have different labs to give users the facilities in order for them to carry out the projects with us. For example, we'll be having design labs where members can get together with other members or even with project members of SimTech and IF to brainstorm on the project. We will be having an imaging and materials lab where users will get to get in touch with microscopics or even dwell with different types of materials to see whether it's this kind of material that you want. And we also have a build lab where we have additive and subtractive manufacturing equipment available to them, 3D printers, power tools, and whatnot. And each of these labs will have the individual ICs in which members can turn to, so they know that this is the person I should be looking for if they need any help. So in terms of facilities, this is what members can look forward to when we're there. Of course, we're still taking feedback on how we can build up the place to be more conducive for members to come and to work on a project with IF.
Great, thank you so much, Darren. All right. So another question, I think this is for Wei Wei. So someone's asking, when I'm identifying the needs, is there always an urge to link it with possible solutions, so there will not be any biasness?
Is there an urge to
Yes.
link it to the solutions?
So in other words, would there be any biasness? So I already know the solution and end in mind. Do I usually do the linkage already?
Okay, that's a interesting question. I would say that if you are applying design thinking, then you are trying to go through the divergent thinking process and then converge on the solution again. So we definitely don't have any like solutions planted ahead, right? So we're actually being quite open-minded because the thing of design thinking going into the field, learning about your user, we usually assume a rather neutral stance. We don't carry like a like we wouldn't try to direct the user towards a certain solution. We could have assumptions, meaning we assume that having this sort of design of the product will help to solve the problem, and then we try to validate this. We're not trying to prove it, because when you have an assumption, that means you are willing to let it to be proven either right or wrong. So if you test it and realize that, hey, actually the users do not respond very favorably to this idea, then you are willing to let go of it and then try to take what you have learned and build on top of it. So you pivot. But if your whole purpose is, oh, I already know a solution, and just talk to the user to prove that this is the way to go, then that deviate a bit from the intention of design thinking lah.
Right. Thank you so much, Maybe. Okay. Moving along. So right now we have questions on the training itself. So Jasmine, we can direct this question to you. Someone is asking, we understand that there's 3 modules for the design thinking program. Actually, what are the differences between the 3 modules?
Okay, thank you for the question. So these 3 modules are really catered to the different the attitude of the person that is participating. So we have different grades. So the first one is apply. So that's for you to get introduced to design thinking, and then implement some quick wins in your company. And then the second module that we have is the 24 hours one. So that one is for you to start to apply design thinking, and also we will introduce some prototyping techniques for physical products. So you can get some hands-on on software tools, and also rapid prototyping tools that we have in SimTech and IF. So the last one is really a very intensive, comprehensive course that really will give you a lot of hands-on practice in terms of prototyping physical products. So we will be doing we will be introducing rapid prototyping tools, and as well as electronics prototyping tools as well, because in physical products nowadays, electronics is one of the key components inside a lot of our products nowadays. So for a participant coming in, so I would say that you can either choose module 1. You can actually combine like a module 1 with a module 3, so that will give you a very good overview of the 5-step methodology in design thinking, and then also give you a really good practice on the physical prototyping tools, electronic prototyping tools, software tools as well. And then or you can also choose to do module 2 and module 3, so that would give you a sort of like a stronger foundation in terms of design thinking and prototyping. Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Jasmine. Okay, right. Next up, we actually have a question on IF again. So we have a question asking now the type of companies that the Innovation Factory work with, and usually how long are we talking about these projects? How long do they usually last? So there's 2 questions. What kind of companies and the length of the projects?
I think we work with any company that wants to make money. So, but we do work with most companies. Actually, the bulk of it is startups and SMEs. They'll take up the bulk of it. We do work, of course, with a couple of LOEs and MNCs. It also really depends on what they want to achieve. So, so we notice again, it's mostly the startups and SMEs would really need a bit more guidance, especially during product development. And instances where MNCs will come in, I've actually been asked this question before. I mean, MNCs are quite established, so why do they still need IF? It's simply for the fact that they may have an existing product that is good, but they want to make it even better. Maybe they've identified a technology within A-Star they want to implement into it to upskill the product, and that's where they come to us for help and assistance and say, this is good, I want to make it better. This is more or less applied to the bigger companies. For the startups and the SMEs, then there will be a bit more hand holding that's required along the way.
Great.
as they also they don't really have their own fixed R&D team, and this is what we can offer to them. So in terms of the sizing of the mix, I would say a good 80%, 85% consists of SMEs and startups, and the 15% would be the bigger establishments. And of course, for the project duration, it would depend on the appetite ultimately. But we also don't want to drag it too long. So a project can be as quick as 3-4 weeks. If you want to come up to a simple mock-up drawing, or can even stretch. I think our longest is about 11 months on paper. That was quite a big project. So, but at the end of the day, we work towards the schedule of what our client wants. They may want to take it nice and slow. Okay, let's do a proper one, but they want to plan to launch it in a year and a half or 2 years' time. Then we work on the schedule with them. If they wanted something quick, or maybe, for example, they want to come up with a drawing to gain investors, they want to do it quick, it could be within 1 month, 2 months. So it would depend on the client, but generally we try not to make it stretch 4 months on average for the average project.
Okay, sounds very agile. Thank you so much, Evan.
Okay.
Okay, so next we have a question on answering questions actually. So interesting. So someone's asking, a lot of the design thinking depends on how open users are in answering questions. So if users were to give very short questions that do not contribute much to the needs, how do you address this issue?
Okay, I would approach it from 2 angles. One is, this one actually pertains to the interview techniques. So maybe you really run into a user who is a bit close up and then they don't really open up too much as you ask. This time, the best way is still to pace you with the user. Meaning if the user is like that, you try to mirror that, but still be very gentle and patient. If the user doesn't say anything beyond that, you can throw other questions to follow up. Like you can still ask like what happened next, or like ask for a specific instance. When was the last time you did something? I mean, eventually you will be able to get something out. Maybe not as much compared to a user who's really vocal, but it's equally important to people who are more reserved, because sometimes you tease out rather interesting perspective from those people. So this one is more on like how to do better interviews, and of course it takes a lot of practice in this as well. The other way of looking at it is you can change your research techniques. Meaning I don't talk to them, but I observe them. So that means you can actually go out and observe, because I saw a research study before where they're trying to see how people use their phones. Is it using one hand, and which particular finger, because they're trying to see the ergonomic of an app, where to better position the buttons. Then for that, they can actually just go out to the MRT, to anywhere, and then you just take down notes on how people are holding their phones and interacting with it. Or you could like get the consent of the user and you do one-on-one observation. So you basically become the shadow of them, and you kind of go into their context and observe what they do. So this data points would be very valid, because you are not just listening to what they have to say, but also really see what they do on a day-to-day, and somewhat is in their natural sort of context. Yeah. So there are definitely techniques to help you find other aspects of the user's behavior, and not just relying on their words only.
Wow, great. Thank you so much, Wei Wei. All right. Thank you so much to all our speakers, to our panelists today. And I believe we do not have any more questions. So once again, I appreciate everyone for attending our webinar today, and I hope you gain a better understanding of design thinking. And do remember that this program is actually funded by SSG for all Singaporeans and PRs up to 90%. Do register soon because these are limited, and our first run is coming in June itself. Right? So with that, I would like to close this webinar. And again, I thank all the panelists and all the participants for joining us today, and appreciate you for coming for the webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.